Hey, what's going on, guys? Nick with Survivor Classic Car Services. We have an LS engine here. This is a 5.3 that I pulled out of a 2002 Chevy Avalanche. The odometer read 385,000 miles or so. I have no idea if this is the original engine, but I figured since I'm going to tear it down anyways to get it ready for the Monte Carlo, I would just kind of go through and show you what I do for a teardown. This is not necessarily the right way or the wrong way, but just what I do to kind of get it ready. There's a couple little issues with this that I'll go through, and I'll kind of show you what I do to get around those, and we'll see how this goes. So all I've really done so far is I drained the oil, and I kind of cheated doing that. I just drilled a hole through the oil pan because I'm not going to use it, so I don't care if it works. That's going to go in the scrap pile anyways. The manifolds are going to go in the scrap pile. I've got some long tube headers sitting around here somewhere that are going to go on the car. But I've drained the oil. I gave it just kind of a quick clean just to knock off some of the loose dirt and grit that was on here. But I mean, if you take a look, I'll bring you over here so you can see, it's still very greasy, very dirty. Surprisingly, didn't look like there was a lot of leaks or anything. Overall in good shape, and you could see right here in the casting 4.8/5.3, so I'm assuming it's a 5.3 because that's what should have come in the Avalanche, but we will find out once I get down into it and really see what's going on. But as you can see, pretty standard. These are 706 heads, which are the standard truck heads. Kind of greasy down in here. I did throw these rags in when I first pulled this out of the Avalanche, which was now a couple of months ago, just to try and keep moisture and stuff out of the cylinder bores. But now that we're going to go ahead and take the heads off and a couple other things, it won't really matter. But we'll go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to try and not use power tools because I imagine they get very loud through the camera there. So I'm going to start by taking off the valve covers. Normally you'd have coil packs here, and these are 10 millimeters for the coil pack hold downs. I already took those off and threw them in a pile off to the side, so we'll go ahead and start with the valve covers. These are an 8 millimeter. This is the first time that I'm taking off the valve covers on this engine, so I'm very excited to see what everything looks like in here. We'll take a look at the rockers and the push rods and all that just to kind of get an idea. Depending on how long this video runs for, this may just be a teardown most likely, or I may try and put a couple bits together. I do have an aftermarket camshaft that's going to be going in. I've got that sitting in a bag off somewhere. I'll have to find all the parts that I want to put on as well. That's fine. Not an issue at all. All right, so we'll pull that valve cover off. A little bit of varnishing going on in here. Oops, lost a couple of bits already. A little bit of varnishing in here. It's not so bad. It does smell like gasoline though, so I'm kind of curious to see what we find with that. Very little bit of, build up sludge crud going on down here, but overall not bad. So that's a pleasant surprise. I'm going to throw this in my pile of parts. I admittedly have not had the best luck keeping LS engines together when used in my vehicles. I drive them kind of rough. So I've accumulated a lot of parts over the years. So I have a lot of pairs of valve covers. So I'm not sure that these are the valve covers that will go back on the car. I think I have some that are a little bit cleaner. And if I don't have to waste the time putting in the elbow grease to clean these up, then that's more time that I can spend doing something else, doing anything else. So we'll see. I may even do aftermarket valve covers. I haven't entirely decided on that. I do have a couple of goodies on order for the Monte Carlo, so those will be showing up hopefully over the next week or so. So as long as I can get the long block put together by then I'm not sure if that's going to end up assembly is going to be a 2-part video or a 3-part video or just a 1-part video. We'll see how that goes. One thing with these LS engines, this is kind of a fun little trick. The truck comes with this big offset fill plug, which is fine. It makes it a lot easier to pour the fuel in, or the oil in, excuse me. But if I can get this off, if you're using it for a car application, you could take the oil fill cover off, and this actually unscrews as well. I might not be able to do this. This is probably loaded with varnish. Moves a little bit. But this can unscrew. Yeah, I'm not going to fight with it. But that can unscrew, and you can actually put the oil plug right in there. The oil cap, excuse me, right in there, which is nice. But like I said, I'm not going to fight with that. All right, so now we've got the valve covers off, and you can see, again, there's a pretty heavy coat of varnish on these, but they look good. I'm not seeing any indication of the trunnions, which are basically just these right here, wearing out. I don't see any potential failures or anything that looks close to failure. This bank looks good. Going over to this side, everything looks pretty good here too. Nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary. So that's good. I'll throw you back up here with a bird's eye view. So now we'll go ahead and we'll take off all of the rockers. These are also an 8mm. Crack those loose. And these are not set to a specific lash like the older engines are, the small block Chevys and the Pontiac and Buick engines and whatnot. These are basically, you just snug them all the way down, and the lifters take care of the rest. So we'll go ahead and get these all spun out, and then we'll take the entire rocker arm rack out. I know a lot of guys will upgrade these to the better trunnion bearings. I have not heard or seen of any failures caused by them, but I have heard that I have heard, you know, I know a guy who knew a guy who had a failure like that, but I have never known anyone personally to have a failure. And I've had a lot of failures on LS engines because, again, I drive my stuff like it's meant to be driven. I find the rev limiter and I don't let go. So I probably will not bother with any trunnion upgrades on this engine. I will, however, be swapping valve springs from the factory ones to a I believe they're Pack 1219s. I know a lot of guys use the 1218s, and I probably would have been fine to have done those, but when I bought the valve springs, I bought them as 1219s on sale, cheaper than the 1218s, which the only difference is they're good for, I think it's a little more lift before you hit coil bind, and that's basically it. They do have more spring pressure, more seat pressure, so they technically will put a little bit more stress on the valve train, but it's a relatively minor amount, all things considered. So again, not anything that I'm terribly worried about. And these rocker arms, again, I've disassembled many of these engines. In fact, I've got one right there that has had a failure. I've got another one behind the camera over there that has had a failure. And I think those are the only two that I have right now in the garage, but I have had many others that didn't survive the long haul, so to speak. All right, so once we get those, we'll go ahead take that out. There's a plastic bag running around on the floor. I'm going to move that. Just put these right on the ground, safe and sound. This one off, same thing. Right on the ground, safe and sound. Set that there so it stops running around. All right, so now, let's see, we've got all of the rocker arms off. Looking at the top of the valves, you want to look for any indication of metal shavings or indentations or scarring or anything like that. I don't see anything on these. They're definitely used, but they look like they still are well within their serviceable life. Push rods, we're going to look for the same thing. We want to make sure that they look smooth. They don't have any marks or indentations. Now this one does look like it's actually worn down, so I'm glad that we had a, yeah, that one's definitely worn down. So normally they would look like this, where it's real smooth. I don't know how well that's going to come through on camera. Real smooth, doesn't have any grooves or markings or anything, and you can actually see side by side that this one has worn down and it has grooves worn into it. So let's see, this is, let's see, so this is our exhaust on cylinder 3. So you've got, or I'm sorry, intake on cylinder 3. Apologize. So we've got intake exhaust, intake exhaust, intake exhaust, intake exhaust. Cylinders 1, 3, 5, 7. Here's a little trick. I'm sure some of you know this. You can always tell which cylinder is cylinder number 1 because it is the furthest forward on the engine. And even though it's a V-bank, obviously two connecting rods can't occupy the same space on the crankshaft, so they will offset the cylinder heads. One will sit slightly back, and you can see you've got this platform here, and the other one will sit flush with the front. So that's going to be our cylinder number 1. If we go around to the back here, you see it's the opposite, where we've got the driver's side bank has this platform here, and the passenger side bank is flush. Now I'm going to set this up. I am kind of curious to see how bad that rocker is, so I'm going to take a look at that real quick. Yeah, so there's actually, probably won't show up on camera, but there's actually a couple of them that are worn in pretty good there. It looks like both of them on cylinder number 3. So, again, I've got extras of those. I'm not terribly worried about it. Same thing with the push rods. Whew, yeah, these have a nice coating. Now for just little, budget rebuilds, I have gone through and just taken a Scotch-Brite pad and cleaned up the sides of these as long as the ends look good. And you can see all the way through them because these do oil through the push rod. I'll just reuse them and not worry about it. These, though, just because of the mileage, these are going to end up hitting the scrap bin. So I'm not even gonna try and reuse them. It is interesting that the driver's side bank seems to have a lot more carbon and varnish buildup on it versus the passenger side. So I wonder if one side had been serviced already, but these are all from the driver's side, and that's all from the passenger side. I don't know how well the lighting difference is going to show there, but these are more of a gold, and these are just covered in gunk. Delicious. Either way, they're all going in the scrap. So we'll put those there. Now, our next step, I'm going to need another extension, so I'm going to grab that. We're going to go ahead and we are going to start taking off the cylinder heads. Now on the passenger side is the oil dipstick. So you've got the dipstick here. It's bolted into the cylinder head right here, and then it continues down into the cylinder head itself, or excuse me, into the block down into the oil pan. So I'm going to take that bolt off, and then I'm probably going to fight with this. A lot of times there's a smaller diameter tube that continues further in here, and a lot of times those will break off in there. So that just kind of is what it is, but I'm going to do my best to try and preserve that just because I don't want to have to fight with it more than I have to. All right, pop this bolt out. And this, for whatever reason, is a bolt that I always lose. So I'm going to do my best to not lose this one by putting it back into the cylinder head once I've removed it. I do have a few good cylinder heads, but it seems to me that I have not the best luck with that. And so a lot of times the cylinder heads will get destroyed when the block is taking itself out from whatever it is that I was doing, burnout or a drag race or a whatever, legal drag race, of course. None of that street racing. Be responsible. It all stayed together, but you can see this is usually where they break. There's an O-ring that sits right here. Let's see if I can move the O-ring out of the way. There's an O-ring that sits right there, and so the tube shrinks to a very small diameter, and all of this sits inside the engine block. So when you're trying to pull it out, you can see it's real weak, and of course it's not in block, so it doesn't bend easy now, but it'll bend easy and it snaps eventually. So that too will go in the scrap pile. Now, next step, we'll start pulling off these cylinder heads. So there are a couple of different sized bolts, 2 different size bolts, and depending on the year of the LS, there are also a couple of different length bolts. So there are these larger bolts here, which I believe are 15 millimeter, and then there's these smaller ones up on the top that are 10 millimeter. These come out real easy. Those are not a very high torque. I forget what the torque number is for them, but it's very low. These guys are a little bit more in there because those are torque and then angle, so those you got to fight with a little bit more. I actually first though am going to take off the exhaust manifolds, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the spark plug wires off, and these don't look bad, so I'm going to hang on to those as spares if I can. There we go, and I'm going to set this back up there so that I can fight with these a little bit better. Oh, this side's already gone. Perfect. All right, so those exhaust bolts are 10 millimeter, so I'm going to switch back to a 10 millimeter. Now these tend to break, so there's a couple little tricks that you can do. One that I like to do is just, if you can get to it, give it a couple taps with a mallet. Already broken off. That one's already got 2 broken off. The taps will give it kind of a shock and can help it loosen up. It's not a guarantee. And again, this engine has a couple 100,000 miles on it, so I'm not expecting miracles. But if it, saves me from doing more of the welding trick, which we could do that as well. I might make that a separate video. But basically you just build up a little pool of weld from where the bolt is recessed in the header after you get the manifold off, of course. And what it will do, oh, this one might snap. Let's see how it goes. Nope, we're good. What it will do is a couple of things. One is it adds a lot of heat, which will kind of cause the corrosion to break up. 2 is it will build up the stud or the bolt outside of the aluminum cylinder head, which will give you something that you could bite onto with some pliers or something and remove it easier. So it's something that once you do it a couple of times, it's very easy to do time and time again. Yeah, these cylinder heads are not in bad shape. Right, yep. they all came loose on this side. That's a pleasant surprise. Now, I'm probably not going to plan on this engine being together for a long time. I actually have never heard of this engine run. Like I said, I did pull it from a 2002 Chevy Avalanche. I bought the vehicle not running. I did apply power to the starter just to get it to kind of kick over so I could hear it spin. It sounded like it was good. It sounded like it had compression, so I'm not expecting any major issues. But when we pull the cylinder heads off, we'll have a little bit of a better idea of what's going on inside, and we'll have a better idea of kind of the overall health of the engine. Now this engine, or this, this video is obviously going to be a little on the long side. I'm not doing any time skips or fast forwards or anything. Let me know if that's something that you guys like, or if you prefer the kind of the highlight reels of the job, or if you just want the Cliff's Notes. Trying to be reasonably thorough without being boring. So there's another piece for the scrap bin. Now I know this is real Mickey Mouse of me, but the, well, I can't say that, Disney will get me. I know this is real cheap of me, but these multi-layer steel exhaust gaskets, I like to keep these because these are actually really good. The OEM gaskets are fantastic. I have reused them a number of times. I've never had a leak on one. So I like to hang on to those. So I'm going to set that off on the side somewhere here. It's not the right thing to do, if you ask most people, but it is a thing that you can do. And it is a thing that you can do that'll save you, 20 to 50 bucks, depending on what kind of gaskets you're going to run. If you're doing like I've even used those OEM gaskets on a Turbo LS, and it worked well for that. I didn't have any issues with that. And that was, let's see, I want to say I had that running at a maximum of about 20 pounds of boost. And that didn't have any issues holding pressure in. I never heard any exhaust leaks or anything like that on it. So it certainly did its job. And again, that was a used one. That was, only 100 and some thousand miles on those engines that I would have had turbocharged. Most of the engines that I get, the LSs I pull from junkyards, have anywhere from 110 or so to 160. And these modern engines, I mean, it's really very impressive, the technology that goes into them, even though it's an archaic design, and depending on who you ask, some people say that it's a Ford design, which is kind of funny. But there are a lot of similar features between the two. But the technology that they put into these nowadays is unreal. I mean, I've pulled apart engines that are, again, 150 to 170,000 miles, and they still have the cross hatching from the factory. Not all of them do, but some of them do, and that's pretty impressive any way you slice it. And these are, only really found in trucks. So it's, work trucks or family haulers or what have you, that generally speaking, they get used, whether to haul stuff or move people around or, what have you. And so for them to have that kind of mileage and still have cylinder boards in that good a shape is pretty impressive. I've dealt with, tinkered a little bit with Subaru engines. I've got one that's split open over there, and that one had, I want to say that one came from a 120,000 mile car out of the junkyard, and that did not have the cross hatching on it, at least not all the way around the bore. The Subaru engine, for those of you that are not familiar, they call them a boxer engine. It's a horizontally opposed. So So rather than the cylinders either doing the V thing like this or the straight up and down like most 4 cylinders, or even on a slight angle like a slant 6 or something, they actually are going completely horizontally opposed. And so gravity over time will take its toll, and the lower portion of the cylinder bore will start to wear away more quickly than the top portion of the cylinder bore, and so they will actually start to oval out. Usually takes a very long. Okay, well, I apologize. Apparently my GoPro got too hot and it shut off. So I'll try and do this again. We'll see how far we get into it. So anyways, we're talking about the Subarus, but yeah, that's that. Subarus have their issues, as do all vehicles. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off this front steam port line. This basically just allows any steam or air in the cooling system to kind of work its way up to the front and burp itself out, where it can condense back in the radiator and whatnot. These are also 10 millimeters. Now there's a couple different varieties of this. The one that's on this engine, which is the one that you will find on most truck engines, is just 1 bar across the front here, and then on the back there's 2 block off plates, since they use the same cylinder design, cylinder head design, excuse me, as the car variants of the LS. The car variants of the LS typically had a 4-port, which I have one sitting around somewhere, but it's got the cross in the front, a cross in the back, and then a line that connects the two. I'm going to set this off to the side. Not sure if I'm going to keep that or not, but that's out of the way. Looks like I'm going to have to take off this bracket on the rear, which this is nice just to protect the fuel rails. If you have the space to run this in your vehicle, and you are running factory manifold and all that, this is very smart to keep on. If you get in an accident and the engine pushes into the firewall, this will protect the fuel rails from getting smashed and leaking and potentially causing a fire. So definitely worthwhile to keep. I will not be using a factory intake manifold, so I'm going to set that off to the side. I will probably keep that just in case for another project, you never know. Now, pop off these rear block off plates. Actually, yeah, I'm going to have to take those off to get to the cylinder head bolts. So I'll take these off real quick. Again, these are 10 mil. Just about everything on this engine external is a 10 millimeter, with the exception of a few bits that are 8 millimeter, specifically the the coil packs and whatnot. This one off. I think because of the GoPro overheating, probably not going to do as long of a video as I was initially intending to, which some of you might be thinking, thank goodness. But I will at least, oh yeah, see this, there's almost no torque on that cylinder head bolt. These ones are very, very loose. Usually even like a mini impact will knock these things off without much fuss. I usually like to at least loosen them just to see. Yeah, these are all very loose. So let's see, just walk these the rest of the way by hand. Yeah, it's probably still quicker with this guy. You know what, maybe I've got the mini impact here, so I'm just going to zap these off. Sorry if it blows your ears out. The other side here. That one's not ready to go. This side seems a little bit tighter, which kind of leads into my theory that the passenger side cylinder head might have been serviced at some point. Because these are, that one wasn't so tight. Yeah, this one wasn't tight either. Just that one. Must be all the oil keeping it tight. See if we can knock this off. Now, again, with my kind of cheap stuff that I do, these are torque to yield bolts. GM calls for them to be replaced anytime that they are used and taken off. Again, I am cheap. I reuse head bolts. I have not had a head lift yet. Not to say that it won't happen, just that it hasn't. That box. Your mileage may vary. I do recommend to other people that you replace head bolts because I don't want to be the reason that your engine falls apart, but I'm okay with being the reason that my engine falls apart. Let's see. These are 15. Do I have 15? I have a 15. We'll use the big boy on these. For those. Nope. That was not a great sound. But I think we're doing okay. That one wasn't tight. All right, moment of truth. Let's see how these cylinder heads look. Now, there's always a very real possibility that when you pop these off, that you get a, I'm gonna just take this ground wire off so it's out of the way here. There is always a very real possibility that when you pop these off, you will find extra oil or coolant that is just buried, you know, sitting somewhere. When you pop this loose, they all come down. Just get that there. This the multi-layer steel gasket from this side unfortunately did not survive. May still reuse it. I'll at least keep it for now. Figure that out later. Go ahead and pop this off. See if I take a bath. See how many of these we can get. Yeah, so this is one of the engines. You see you've got a shorter and a longer bolt. So the shorter bolts go in the middle row all the way on the outside. So the very, very front and the very, very rear is where these shorter bolts will go. And the longer bolts will go in every other spot. Obviously not the top row, that's where the 10 mils go. But all right. Set these off to the side. Now, let's see if we've got all 4 pistons in here. The world may never know. Oh, there's the coolant I told you about that we were going to see. Ooh, that's oil. That's a lot of oil. Good heavens. Okay. Well, let's see here. I will set this cylinder head right here. Wipe my hands real quick so I can grab the camera. So looking down in there, let's see, I'm gonna grab my flashlight so we can really illuminate the situation. So looking down in there, these are the dished pistons. So this is more than likely a 5.3. I don't think anybody puts dish pistons in a 4.8 unless you're really looking for a turd. The 4.8s do have flat top pistons. There are some high performance 5.3s that do have the flat top pistons as well. But most of them, the standard, the LM7 is not one that does that. But they look good. Yeah, so you could see, I don't know if this is going to come through on camera, but there is still factory cross hatching on this. So I'm not sure that this is the original engine, or if it is the original engine and it's got that kind of mileage on it. Again, the odometer was 385,000 or so. That's very impressive. Now this cylinder, let's see, this is cylinder number 5, is loaded with oil and other gunk. Some of that may have fallen down. No, because you know what, I cleaned it up pretty good. And these back two, 5 and 7, both. Quite a bit of oil in there. And some proof of life, if you will. Let's see, yeah, this is a cylinder head gasket that I will not be reusing. That's going to go in the scrap pile. There's our scrap pile. That's, you can see that's one of the ones that let go there. It's a little banged up in there. Cylinder's all rusted up. Set this over here for a second so I can pop off that other cylinder head. Hopefully the GoPro doesn't shut off again. Feeling pretty warm. Not optimistic about it. We'll see how it goes. All right, so we'll pull these out. Middle row out. Feel like I'm racing the clock before the GoPro shuts off again. Hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, I'll just take a few minute breather because it is warm. It was raining today too, so it's very muggy. It's like a soup. Like a soup. All right, we'll pull this cylinder head off and we'll see how it looks. Oh yeah, this is all loaded with stuff too. So I'm going to set the passenger side further towards the garage door. So here's the passenger side bank. Doesn't look like it had as much oil sitting in it, but these are definitely dirty. Again, more proof of life in here in all of them. But the bores themselves, they look good. This one definitely still has cross hatching in it, so that's really good to see. That makes me very happy. Good bit of rust down in the water jackets there, but not a big deal. Lifters all look okay. They're all there, so that's good. I'm going to check them on this side, but they all look like they're there, so that's definitely a good thing. Actually, why don't we do this? I'll show you the cylinder head. So this was the driver's side cylinder head, and you could see that this was just coated in oil. So the driver's side is where the PCV, or the positive crankcase ventilation, is, which is supposed to help with all of this oil accumulation and whatnot. Obviously it's probably not functioning if this is how everything is looking, so that's pretty rough. Passenger side looks cleaner, but yeah, I would still hesitate to call it clean. Spark plugs look like they're pretty good. There's good coloring on them, but they are covered in oil. They're pretty oil fouled. This one's loaded with gunk on it. But again, okay, so the camera died again, but I let it cool down for a little bit, changed a couple settings. Hopefully that moves things along. But we were talking about the cylinder heads, and you saw everything we needed to see, so I'm going to move ahead. We're going to take off the valley plate cover. This is a couple of 10 millimeters, so we'll just hammer through that. Maybe not with this. I did take the knock sensor harness, what was left of it, out. They basically just yank up, you pinch the connectors, they come off. It's pretty straightforward. I didn't think that was anything that needed to be on camera. But that is how you do it. I'll just crack all of these loose, and then we'll hit it with the ratchet gun here for the mini impact. Now these LS engines use a lot of these 10mm bolts, so I like to keep them even if I'm not going to use them. This, for example, is a thing that I'm not going to reuse. I am going to be using a non-factory computer, and because of that I will have no need for knock sensors. So go ahead and, well, actually, I suppose my history with these engines would say otherwise, but regardless of whether or not I should use knock sensors, I will not be using knock sensors. Let's see if I can get these. Prying this up is always fun. There's a thin gasket in there, but it's not always easy to get between either the block and the gasket or the valley cover and the gasket. So I use a pry bar or a screwdriver or sometimes both. If I can get one in between, get the other in between, and we can walk it up, all across. Same kind of thing, just walk it a couple steps at a time. And then once you get your fingers underneath it, it should just kind of pull up. These are rubber gaskets on these, I believe. There we go. The little grommets on the bottom that fill those holes there. So we'll pop that off. This is going to go scrap. And then we've got this gasket, which usually these gaskets are okay to reuse, but this one is falling apart, so that's going to be garbage. So we'll leave that be. Now, kind of done with everything on the top side. I am going to just spin the engine over for a couple reasons. One is to try and knock as much of this crap out of the cylinder bores as possible. Two, to just kind of look, listen, and feel. Make sure that there's not any bad noises, anything that we don't want to hear, any clanking or grinding or tapping even. Just anything that could be parts hitting other parts that they're not supposed to be. Clean out some of these cylinder bores a little bit. The oil's not so bad to be in there. It's a rust protectant if nothing else, so I'm not that worried about it, but getting all the bits of, you know, shells and nuts and what have you out of there is really my primary concern. So, all right, now that we got that, let me see if I can move this a little bit. Try and get this a little bit more covered, and I guess that's just going to be how that is. So now we will flip the engine over, and this, I'm sure, is where I'll see a little bit extra oil, possibly. Yep, there it is. And some coolant. All right. Everybody's coming to the party. Delicious. Delicious. So now we'll take the oil pan off. And once again, that's going to be 10mm. So we'll zip those off. Boy, these are on there. But that's just fine. Now a couple of these, oh boy, really made a mess with that coolant. A couple of these go through, not into the block, but like these front two, for example, go actually into the timing cover, which we'll get to that soonish. Most of these go into the block. And then there's two on the back here, all the way in the back. Not these low ones, but these two high ones actually go into the rear cover. So when you're putting all that stuff together, usually not always. I'm kidding, always. You want to tighten up the oil pan first, and then tighten up the front or rear cover. And the reason you want to do that is when you put the front cover on, for example, if you tighten it up to the block and then you tighten it up to the oil pan, there may be a little bit of a gap somewhere along here. Not always, not even usually, but sometimes there can be a little bit of a gap and you might get some seepage. If you snug this up, these bottom two bolts first, which is going to pull the timing cover tight against the oil pan, it'll seal against the block, you know, anywhere on that plane, but at least then you'll be sealed up against the oil pan as well and reduce your chance of a leak. Now, most of these oil pan bolts are the same. Take this off if I can. That's just garbage. Keep that bolt though. Most of these oil pan bolts are the same, but the rear two going into the rear cover are longer. So you do want to be aware of that. Oops, that's fine. That one was extra. See, they're considerably longer. That one almost looks bad. But otherwise, virtually, back to what I was saying earlier, a lot of these 10mm bolts are the same or close enough that you can use, you know, oil pan bolts in the timing cover of the rear main, or vice versa, or on the valley pan. Sometimes, I mean, it's best to use them where they came from, or at least verify the lengths of them. But it is something that you can do. Now these bolts I'm going to keep separate from everything because I do have a different oil pan that's going to be going on. So we will go ahead and pop this off. It came off a lot easier than the top cover. There we go. Flip that back over. Oh yeah, and that was pretty nasty in there. Oh, and very curious that there are some metal shavings in here, it looks like. Oh no, that's just castings. Okay. Whew. That's a relief, because I was not looking forward to really getting into this engine. That's going to be scrap, but that's dirty scrap, so that's going to sit there. I really should have something to kind of clean this up. I like to take a look in the pickup tubes just to see if there's anything in there that shouldn't be. Specifically, I check for metal or anything. There is something here, and it is shells. So the squirrels got into this at some point, the engine. The reason that this car, or this truck rather, was designated as a parts truck is there were rodents that got into it, chewed up the wiring harness, and basically just made it to a point where it was not usable. I spent about a day kind of playing around with the wiring, trying to see if I could make it run, and if so, if it would be reliable in running. But I was unsuccessful, and rather than spending any serious amount of time or money in trying to make it run, I parted the truck out. I was able to sell enough parts to cover my entire investment and basically get the engine for free. So for all intents and purposes, this is a free engine for me, which is cool. Let's see. At some point I'm going to have to clean this block. Oh, this paint's just flaking off, and that's not great. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. We'll pull off the intake tube, or the oil pickup tube. Let's see here. Now, if memory serves, and it doesn't always, I believe those are 13 millimeters, and then there is one, sometimes two, just one on this engine here that is a 10 millimeter. Again, everything on these engines is a 10 millimeter, so don't lose your 10 millimeter socket. You'll have a tough time with these engines. this is something that I won't be using this pickup tube because, again, I'm changing the oil pan, and with a different oil pan comes a different oil pickup tube. Let's see, did memory serve? Memory serves. These are 13s. All right. So the oil pickup tube has a 10 millimeter up at the front that bolts into the oil pump, and then there is a 13 that holds it to the windage tray on either side, and you'll see there's little straps attached to the tube that you can see. Now, these oil pickup tubes, when you go to install this, and if I do a build video, which will probably have to be a multi-part video based on how my camera's behaving, but if you do a build video, if I do a build video, excuse me, when you're putting these together, the oil ring, the O-ring that goes between the pickup tube and the oil pump is extremely important. You want to make sure you're very careful with it, because if those get pinched, or if they break, or if they're not fully seated for any reason, they will cause engine failure. There's a couple different colors of them as well. So this one looks to be a green one. There's a green one, there's a blue one, and I believe there's a red one. There may even be other colors, but I'm going to hang on to this one just because, again, I'm a hoarder. I'm a pack rat. I keep all of the things, all of the shiny things. That's just the way that I am. All right, so we'll put that back. I will take off the rest of the bolts for the windage tray because I am probably going to clean the windage tray. Actually, first, I'm going to put this 10 mil back into the oil pump just to spin it a little bit. That's one that I like to keep there because although it is a 10 mil, it's a little bit of a different 10 mil than everything else on the block. You could probably get away with using like an oil pump or an oil pan bolt or similar, but it's just something that I think you ought to use the right one for. My neighbor just got home, so you might be treated to some neighborly conversation. We'll see how it goes. Pop these off. One, there's two, actually I guess that's 3 and 4. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right. Yeah, let's see. We'll relocate my sockets temporarily. Remove the windage tray. As you can see, it's pretty gross, so I'm going to clean that up. Or I might see, I don't know if my oil pan has a different one. All right, and then I'm going to thread these back on just so they are here, don't get lost. Throw them on by hand. Not terribly worried about it. And more. All right. Now, wipe my hands and we'll walk you over so you can see what I see. So as you can see, everything here is pretty well covered in, you know, varnish. I'm sure some people will call it sludge, and that's fine. It's not far off from sludge. So what I'm going to do now is these are, I believe, 11 millimeters. So I'm going to pop one of these off so that we could check the bearings, see if the bearings are good. I'll set you back over here. We'll go ahead and crack off. Can. Go. So this would be cylinder number 1. Once you crack them, they come apart pretty okay. Now these caps are pretty neat. These are not a machined finish. They are cracked rods. So I'll show you what that means here in a second. Oh wow, these bearings look great. So, holy cow. Yeah, this had to have been gone through at some point. So the bearing material looks awesome. I mean, it's not worn through. Usually as they start to wear, you'll get to like copper on the inside, but it looks like that's not there. But what I was going to say is these cracked rods, so you could kind of see here, it's like a textured finish there. I'll knock out the other half, and that way we'll see how the rest just kind of fell a little bit there, didn't it? Yeah, so this baby is primo. And these look like factory style pistons. And oh yes, this one's got a little bit of a scuffing on the piston. Trying to get that where the light will catch it. It's got a little bit of scuffing on the piston, but I mean, I can't catch a nail on it or anything, so I'm not going to worry about it. So there's 2 different generations of what they call the LS engine. There's a generation 3, which is what this is. This is the early ones. I don't remember exactly what year it started and ended. It came out in '97 with the Corvette with the LS1, and then they started implementing them in the trucks in, I think, '99. And it went on until, I want to say, 06-ish or so, or 05, something like that, where they switched to the Gen 4. And there's a bunch of different little changes that they did. But one of the big changes is they went from a press pin for the rods, where the pin that holds the piston onto the connecting rod is actually pressed in place, so it's actually locked in. The only way to take it off is either like a hydraulic press, where you would actually press it out, which is where it got the name, or you can reinsert them by heating up the rod and the rod end, the small rod end, and dropping the wrist pin in there. The other style, I happen to have one here. Whoops. Drop something that I didn't want to drop. The other style is a floating. So there's, again, I'm not sure how well that's going to show up there, but there's a little circlip inside there that holds the pin in, one on either side. So you could pop these clips out, and the wrist pin will essentially just fall out, and you can change the pistons a lot easier. Now, there's a couple differences between the Gen 3 and the Gen 4 rod. You can kind of see they're both I-beam rods, but the Gen 4 is noticeably beefier, kind of all the way around. So the Gen 4 is a great, inexpensive upgrade if you just want to do something kind of on a budget, but it's far from necessary. For this engine, like I said, this will be going into Monte Carlo, which is why it's part of the Project Monte Carlo deal. I think I am gonna maybe check 1 or 2 more end caps here, and I'm probably just gonna leave this be, because that is in way better shape than I thought it was. So as long as the next few caps that I check are in good shape, I'm gonna just leave it be. But anyways, back to how this whole thing started. The end caps are what's called cracked, where they basically put a stress point on the rods and quite literally crack them. So they're textured because they are a perfect match for each other, which means that you cannot accidentally put the wrong rod end on the wrong rod, and you also cannot put them on backwards. And it also just makes them more likely, almost guaranteed, to line up where you can't have it, shifted off slightly one way or the other, where you would put high spots with the bearings and risk either damaging the rod or the crankshaft or whatever else. So I'm going to set this off to the side right now because I am going to do that. And I'm going to pop off the next cap here. All right, and let's see how that looks. We'll also get a good idea on how the crankshaft looks here. Make sure that there's no big marks or anything. Yeah, see, I have to think that somebody rebuilt this engine, because this is cylinder number 2, and it also looks fantastic. If you take a look at the crankshaft, I just rubbed my fingers on it, so that's what that smudge is. But the crankshaft also looks awesome. I mean, there's that little bit of buildup in between the two connecting rods, which you can kind of see where that bearing stops is right about where that line ends. But I mean, there's nothing here that my finger's catching on outside of that center ridge there. So this is in much better shape than I was really anticipating. I was expecting to have to do a lot more. At least I was thinking I would do connecting rod bearings, just because it's kind of one of those things that it's like, while you're in there, they're $30 or whatever, or $40 for a set. And so it's kind of like, you might as well just do it for the insurance. But with these looking as good as they do, I don't think I'm going to bother. Now these really should be torqued back in. I'm just going to kind of snug them right now, just to make sure that it doesn't spin a bearing while I'm playing with it here, instead of staying where I want it. So go ahead and pop number 2 here. So I'm just going to do 1 per journal, I think, just to verify that there's nothing funky going on with any of them. Because usually you pull one and you can get a good idea of how both of them are for that journal. If one of them starts having problems, any metal shavings or anything are fairly likely to start wandering into the next and create issues. So if one of them looks kind of bad, you should check the other one, and it could be worse. If one of them looks really bad, then at that point you're doing heavy work anyways, so you might as well check the other one, pull it apart, do whatever. But yeah, see, this one again looks great, don't have any concerns there. Crankshaft looks awesome, so we're going to snug that one back up. I'd like to lie to you guys and say that I'm going to get a torque wrench and do that all the right way, but knowing me, I'll probably just not do that. And then I'll be surprised when it explodes on me. But anyways, while I'm pulling these, we'll talk about kind of the future of the Monte Carlo and what we're going to do with it in the next steps here. So in the first video, kind of talked about, what do I want to do? What are my goals for it? Yeah, this one, another one, looks great. I kind of talked about maybe I want to set it up to do, kind of road race stuff. Maybe I want to set it up to do kind of drag race stuff. Maybe I want to set it up to do, a little bit of everything. And I think that little bit of everything is probably what it's going to turn into. I would like it to be able to take a turn without, either dragging the door handles on the ground or kicking the ass end out every time you try and take a turn, or it's got to be safe. It's got to be wife approved, if you will. So with that, I figured going to a modern fuel injected engine, which was always kind of the plan, just because this is an engine that I've done a number of things with and I'm reasonably familiar with, and there's a huge wealth of knowledge on, you know, what these engines are capable of and how you can make them do the things that you want them to do. So, you know, that's one big reason. Yeah, that one. It's got a single line running down the middle there, but I don't see anything on the crankshaft, so I'm not that worried about it. Crankshaft looks good. It would help to put these on the right way. That cracked rod coming in handy. But I was able to get a good deal on a couple of different speed parts. So even though I do have some, I would say, reliability things that kind of need to be done, the ball joints, for example, in the front are pretty bad, both upper and lower. And I think the solution that I'm going to have for that is going to be to just replace the control arms altogether, because the bushings are bad, the ball joints are bad. It really needs a little bit of everything. I'm going to plug in the camera because the battery's looking like it's getting a little low. Try not to have this die. I don't even know what time we're on, third time, fourth time. But I got a good deal on a couple of parts. So moving forward, when we go to assemble the engine, I will reveal what some of those fun parts are. I will tell you some of it right now. I do have, I think I said this already actually, I do have an aftermarket camshaft that's going to be going in. So it's going to have a little bit of a lumpy idle, which is going to be fun. This puppy's stuck on there. All right, well, I might have to fight with that when it's not 9 o'clock at night. So anyways, that's a 24 millimeter bolt. I usually just hit that with the impact and that should walk out. I've got a 3-jaw puller that we use to pull this off. When I say we, I mean I. More 10 bolts holding this front plate on, the timing cover. I'm going to see if I could get that off because I would love to show the timing gear and everything underneath that. So I'm going to pause the video while I fight with that quietly and obnoxiously, and then I'll start it back up once I got it. All right, so I was able to get the pulley off. This is the crank bolt. You can see it's a big, these are also supposed to be torque to yield, one-time use. Actually, I don't know if they're torque to yield, but they are supposed to be replaced. I usually reuse them. Again, I'm cheap, don't do what I do. So now we'll go ahead and take off all of those 10 mils. And I'll show you the timing gear set. Just pop all these loose from snug. Switch over to the zip gun. Now I'm not a fan of oil leaks at all. So these front covers, these are, I don't know, 30 bucks or so on Amazon, where you get the new crank seal, you get the timing cover seal. It's all one piece cast aluminum. And again, they're like 30 bucks or something. Very worthwhile doing. So that's probably going to go in the scrap bin along with that gasket. And again, these 10 millimeter bolts, these are like the same that they've used everywhere on this engine. I'm going to just throw in my bolt bin because I have about 1 million of these. And I'm sure when I realize that I don't have any floating around, I'll know exactly where I can go to get them. Let's see, is it I'm gonna take off the main ground on the side here. Should have done that earlier, but I didn't. And so here we are. That. Throw that bolt back in just in case I decide that I need or want it there for whatever reason. Okay. All right, this video is going on for a long time. So now we've got, let's see if we can just move the crank hub. Pivot this a little bit here. So you've got the timing gear. I'll tell you what I'll do is I will flip the engine back around right side up. So it's a little bit more traditional viewing position. Hey look, I found more oil. These engines like to do that. All engines like to do that. So we've got, is that seeing that right? I'm gonna get down a little bit. So we've got the timing gear here, we've got the oil pump, which is driven by the crankshaft, which is this center snout piece. So I'm going to go ahead and take the oil pump off as soon as I find the ratchet that I just set down. Here it is. Look at that, I did it. I did it. All right. So the oil pump is held on by, you'll never guess, 10mm bolts. Pop those off. And there's a couple little mods you could do if you're doing any kind of high performance stuff. There's a couple little mods you can do to the oil pump to make it run a little bit smoother. I can kind of show you some of that real quick. Pop off the oil pump. Hey look, more oil in the oil pump. Who would have thought? Am I right? Whoops. Am I right or am I right? I'll just throw these 10 mils back in here because, again, this is one of those spots that unless you verify that the length is the same, you're better off just reusing them. Only because if you've got them too short and they're not fully engaged, it might strip the threads out of the block, which would be a bad thing in this spot. And if they're too long and they don't allow you to fully pull the oil pump up against the block, you could have issues with it. So let's see if I can do this without making a mess, which I doubt. I'm very good at creating messes, but that's fine. So this is the oil pump. It's driven by a rotor that spins off of the crank hub, and that pulls from the pickup side here, and then it pushes into the front of the block right here, where oil gets distributed out through the various galleys and whatnot to the rest. So this is where the bypass, I'm gonna just make a mess here. This is where the bypass spring is. So once the pressure builds up to a certain point, the oil pressure is bypassed and it doesn't flow the same way. So what some guys will do is there's a little ball in here and a spring is essentially all it is. So you take this out, you put a little shim in there, a small washer or something, just to kind of pre-tension that spring a little bit so that it holds pressure a little bit longer. I don't know how effective that is. I just know guys do it. Also, if you've got a small Dremel, I don't know how well you could see way inside there, but there's just from being a cast piece, there's a good bit of flashing from the casting that you can smooth out, and it helps smooth the oil flow coming in, which just makes the pump operate more efficiently. Being that the rest of this engine seems to have had at least some attention given to it, I had initially planned on replacing that, not with a new one, of course, but with a lower mileage unit. But I might take that apart and kind of see how the rotors look, and if the rotors look okay, I might do those mods that I was talking about and then just go ahead and run this one anyways, just to see how it goes. So now, coming into the final stretch here, I'm going to set this oil pump off to the side here. All right, now we will go ahead. I'm just going to kind of crack everything loose as I'm talking about it, and then I'm going to zip it off with the whatchamahoosit. So we've got the lifters and lifter trays, which we're going to take out. And we could have done this while the engine was right side up, but it's not a big deal. And then I'm going to try and get the upper timing gear off. And we'll see if we can at least pull the cam. And then that will probably be it for this video. Let's see, now sometimes, usually not on the high mileage ones. Yeah, no. Sometimes when you pull the lifter trays, the lifters will actually come out with it, which is kind of neat, but unfortunately in this instance, did not happen. Oh, I got close with this one, but that's all right. These lifter trays, they're just plastic trays. Now, I've heard also people like drilling holes through the bottom of these to help the oil drain back down faster. I don't know that I would do that, because having the oil, you know, kind of pooled up by the lifters so that they don't just sit dry on the outside. I don't know if that makes a difference. I don't imagine that it does one way or the other, but the risk of, you know, having plastic shavings falling down into the rest of the engine and everything just seems like an unnecessary risk, so it's probably not anything that I would bother with. All right, now move this crankshaft pulley before I break my neck. Pop off these guys. Now, there's a couple different ways that guys will take the camshafts out. And this is always a dangerous thing. Everybody makes the joke of don't look at the cam bearings. Because if you look at the cam bearings, they're bad. If you don't look at the cam bearings, they're not bad. I'm going to look at the cam bearings because I have the cam bearing tool, and again, they're like 30 bucks or something. But this is a great opportunity. There's a couple things that you could do here. First, we got to take off the cam retaining plate, which on this engine, not on all of them, but on this engine, it is 10 millimeter screws. On some engines, they are, I believe it's Torx, or maybe it's an Allen head, I forget. But not on this one. This one, they are 10 mil. All right, so we'll pop off that cam retaining plate. And all that cam retaining plate does is literally retain the camshaft. It stops it from walking too far to the front of the engine. There's another one on the back that stops it from walking too far to the back of the engine. Just making sure that the lifters don't walk off the lobes of the camshaft and basically wipe out your engine, because nobody wants that, especially if you've had to deal with it numerous times. Nobody wants that. Timing chain, probably going to replace that. Again, that's inexpensive insurance. That might even get a new part. We'll see how it goes. The camshaft itself, though, there's a couple ways you can do it. Some guys will take either 1/4 inch extensions. You can shove those in and use that to kind of walk it out. Some guys will take a long screwdriver and shove those in and walk it out. What I usually do, and I don't have any handy, but I will usually take water pump bolts, because they are the same thread, but they are much longer, and I will thread 2 water pump bolts in, and then usually I'm able to walk it out that way. I think what I'm going to do for this one, since I don't have any handy, is I am going to thread in 1 bolt, and here's a fun little trick. If anyone is into archery and you've got some arrows that are garbage arrows, You spin the cam over a couple of times and it sets the lifters up into their bores, and they will over time drop down. And if you don't have the engine at a point where you want it disassembled, it can be kind of a pain. But if you spin the camshaft while you're putting the arrow, just a little bit of tension, usually, it looks like this one's not going to do it for me. Usually you can get the lifters to kind of dance up. And when the lifters are up, you could stick the arrow through and it will put enough tension that the lifters don't come back down. Here we go. Oops. Helps to spin on the right spot. Let's see, that might be all the way in. Is that all the way in? Nope, not all the way in. Some of my lifters are spinning a little bit in their bores, which makes it difficult to, I guess we're just going to go with that. That last lifter was stuck halfway up the bore, so I'm not that worried about it. Go ahead and get this one in, or that one in, much easier. Yeah, see, that's in all the way. That one's definitely not, which means it's stuck on one of these lifters. There's at least 3 lifters that I see moving. So it's probably not stuck on one of those 3. It's probably stuck on that one that's not moving. This trick works a lot better when it works. There we go. Okay, yeah, it was that last lift that was stuck halfway out the bore. Okay, so now that I've got that, I am going to grab, if I can find, a screwdriver here. And I've got the one bolt that's in there just to kind of give me something to pull from. And then we're just going to give it little spins, a little bit of rearward pressure. And hope that when this comes out, there we go, that it doesn't take bearings with it, because that's what you don't want. So walk that out a little bit. Spin it. Once you get the first set out, tends to go a little bit easier. So you're able to get a little bit more of a purchase on it, if you will. This one doesn't seem like it wants to be very friendly with me. I'm binding up on something, which means that I might have pulled one of the bearings already. No, we're still moving. There we go. There we go. There we go. All right, cool. My screwdriver back, and we'll take a look. And see, even this cam looks like it's in pretty good shape. That lobe pulled a little bit of material off something. But, you know, there's no heavy grooves on any of the lobes. None of them look excessively worn. It is a stock cam. Can't see, there's some kind of marking on the back here. It is a stock cam, so it's going to turn into a lamp or a paperweight or something, which is totally fine because I'm not that worried about it. But that is essentially the teardown of a, in this case, Generation 3 LS. You can see you could do it in your garage. It doesn't have to be a fancy shop. Let me know if you want to do a build video or if you want me to just put it together and then talk about what I did, or if you want me to do a condensed version of just kind of the highlights of what went on with everything, or if you want me to do something else, let me know. But like I said, I've got some parts on order that are going to come in over the next week or two. I've got some parts that are already here that are ready to go on, so I will probably put the long block together. I've got a Terminator X system that's going to be going on the Monte Carlo, so that I probably won't do too much of a dive into how I do everything with that, because I'm not even sure yet how I'm going to do everything with that. I still have to figure out how I'm going to run fuel lines and what size fuel lines I'm going to run. But a couple extra surprises, a couple goodies that are going to be coming in, and we'll kind of see how everything goes. So thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe for future videos, and make sure to keep tabs on our website. You can see all the cool cars that we've got for sale. The cars there, again, are much nicer than the stuff I'm working on. So it's a different world. But thanks again for joining, and I look forward to showing you what happens next with the Monte Carlo. Have a good one.